Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the PetaPixel podcast. It's your buddy Jordan Drake here, joined with my buddies, Jaron and Chris. How you guys doing?
We're very well today, thank you.
Good. So I wanted to kick things off with another question to get the audience to know you. I think this is a fun thing I'm going to drop all the time. So, Chris and Jaron, if you were a Kelvin color temperature, what Kelvin color temperature would you be?
3,200.
Yeah, you're just a warm glow.
Warm, that's right.
That's what I feel whenever you're around. Just
well, that one I'm actually. So the last time you asked a question, I could not improv myself out of a box. But this one I actually have an opinion about. I do feel like I'm a warm color temperature.
Chris?
Well, these questions at the start of the podcast make me like 7,000, just blue as blue can be. I don't know. I'm just like, what? Kelvin temperature?
Just dark, cloudy, grumpy. Okay, so I'm not going to pick my own. I want you to select for me. What is your impression of me as a Kelvin color temperature?
Well, he's an intense egomaniac, and he thinks he's very well balanced. So I'm going to say he thinks he's daylight. He's 5,600.
I would say that, yes, Jordan probably thinks he's 5,600.
And he's not.
But when he's got something to do, he's like 1,200.
Yeah, I was going to say like my sunny disposition, right? Just nothing but pleasant. Okay.
You radiate like that color when you're working or when you're busy or when you feel like you have too much to do, which is almost all the time.
He turns 1,200 red. Yeah,
it's interesting to know you both agree that I'm deluding myself. So that's
he goes into like 65 nanometer infrared. This guy when he gets upset. Yes, absolutely.
On a completely unrelated subject, I wanted to know if do you guys listen? Did you ever listen to or still listen to Death Cab for Cutie?
Oh, not in a long time.
Yeah, I was never big into them. Go ahead.
Did you like the Postal Service?
Sure. I mean, I heard these guys on the radio a couple times. Not always my thing.
Did you know that they were the same person? The same band? Okay.
Yes, I did know
I just got a notification like yesterday on social media that the Postal Service and Death Cab were on tour, and I was just like, oh. So what do? Do they just like turn around and act like they're a different band?
They just switch t-shirts halfway through.
Like, who opens for who, and then how does that look? Do they change up the stage arrangement?
I think they just like shoot out letters to the audience just as a bit.
Oh, I get it, because they're the Postal Service.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Anyway, I just saw that, and I now have like music playing in my head from when I was in college that I can't get out. So if I start like humming to myself during this, it's because I have Death Cab stuck in there.
I mean, you're the editor. You're the one who's going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, mute myself.
Guys, this is an important show. We're doing the PetaPixel Awards. Different from the Chris and Jordan. This is like the editorial staff of PetaPixel have all come together to get like a consensus opinion on some of the best stuff that came out this year. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. Yes. The best part about this year is that there was so much to choose from. Like it was like difficult to nominate.
That's true.
Because there were like the awards tended to be very spread out because there was so many different things that came out. So I'm curious to see what people think of the selections.
But we also have some interesting news stories coming up in the photographic world. 4 of them, in fact. So I think we should cue the intro.
Yeah, let's do it.
And welcome back from our cute little intro. As always, we really would like to thank our podcast sponsor, OM System. They've been taking really good care of us over this first foray into the podcasting world, and we're loving it. Now, OM System is the makers of the ultimate compact camera for outdoor enthusiasts, the OM5. We've used it ourselves. I do like it very much. It's nice and compact. It's not here to be flashy, but it actually is a really sexy looking camera. It's not here to steal the show, but in a way, just be the experience, like the sole reason for your adventure. It's like your favorite pair of boots that you lead onto a trail unknown, or that bag that's always been with you, or that friend that helps you see the world in a beautiful, different way. That's lovely copy. For me, I find the OM5 is beautiful because it's rugged, it's going to stand up to abuse, and it's compact, as are the lenses. And for me, if I'm doing adventure, that's most important. So recently, we published an awesome film. You guys should check it out. OM System system ambassador, Matt Seuss. He explored Idaho's stunning Sawtooth Mountains with an OM5. The compact size, again, like I mentioned, the IP53 weather sealing, critical to just being able to go hike, bike, fly, small planes through the mountains and not worry about your camera gear getting wrecked. So, this was something Michael Bonacore did. Hey, you guys watched that film?
I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun watch to an area of Idaho that we haven't explored yet. But yeah, and it's just great to see it kind of tackle a huge variety of challenges. I could throw one more challenge in. I forgot to mention last week, which is crazy, is I talked about going to shoot that Half Sorry celebration of my neighbors.
Yes.
I said, Liam, you should grab a camera and get candids of the kids because it's celebrating them. So he looked at my cameras, grabbed an OM5 with a 20 mil and a 9 mil. So he had some options. He's a prime kid. That's my boy. And it was really interesting because they're all like taking pictures of each other at this. They got pictures that we would never get with like Ever-Eye going and jamming a giant camera in their faces. So yeah, you can shoot amazing vistas in Idaho, or just something a little bit less intimidating like that. It also excels at, and kids love it. Or one kid,
and
kid.
It'll hopefully survive a child. It's a strong camera.
I'm sure he spilled some stuff on it.
Check out PetaPixel Travel Letter and Michael Bonacore's story. It's a good film to watch, guys. Go to PetaPixel, visit our website, click the link in the video description. You'll find it there. But also make sure to visit explore.omsystem.com/PetaPixel. There's a complete list of incredible holiday savings. They're still on, so go now for OM System cameras, lenses, and more. And again, thank you, OM System, for being a sponsor on our podcast.
Cool. Thank you very much for that, Chris. Let's get into the news. This one is me patting myself on the back because I scooped this.
Yes.
Filmic's entire team of 22 people were let go by parent company Bending Spoons in November. That includes everyone from the CEO down to the whoever else. All their developers gone. Bending Spoons bought them last year. And it was framed as like a way for them to improve the software, get the funding they needed, whatnot. And a year later, Bending Spoons just essentially said, "We know all we need to know about this. See you later. We're going to do it internally now." I don't know if you guys got the sense that something might have been amiss, but when we were doing the iPhone stuff and we didn't have Filmic Pro at all, and I've had a great relationship with them, I emailed them, be like, "Hey, are you working on a support for log? Are you working on support for SSD?" And they're just like, "I have got no news to share." That was
they did have news to share. They're just not allowed to share it.
Well, they still don't support external. Like they didn't add anything for external SSD thing. Like nothing special there. They did add log support eventually, but like there hasn't been a major update to Filmic since September of last year.
Yeah, it's interesting because in our review, we pointed out, like, soon we're going to get all the assist tools that we want with support for log through Filmic, not knowing, and I'm sure a huge part of this news is Blackmagic completely stole their thunder with full support for all these features and a bunch more, and then dropped it for free. I mean, that's going to just absolutely kill the business model of everybody looking to provide pro features on an iPhone.
Yeah, they made sure that Apple used their software to
well, I don't even know if they did
content.
that. I just think Apple picked it because it was the best one
there
available.
You go. It was
available.
Fantastic.
Filmic wasn't available yet. The thing that's of note is that like even though yes, Blackmagic did do it for free, I think Filmic hurt themselves by switching up their strategy in terms of pricing. And it wasn't Filmic that did it. It was Bending Spoons that they went to like a monthly fee sort of thing, as opposed to the one and done purchasing thing that Filmic used to do. Not that it matters because they basically got rid of everyone. So,
but they're actually still using the app, right? I mean, they're bending. I was going to say they're bending it into their company, Bending Spoons. But
yeah, it's owned by them.
It's owned by them. Like, was this just a way of like taking the technology and saying, "Hey, we're going to like go forward with our own crew in Italy," or I mean,
yeah, basically, I think what they did is they did that. They learned. They thought they got everything they needed to know from the team at Filmic over the last year, and now that they think that they can keep carrying the app forward, they no longer need those 22 people, and they're just going to keep updating the app on their own.
Well, we'll see, right? Because I'm curious to see what's Filmic going to do going forward. Now we're going to see more stuff here. We're going to see more apps being updated, or are they just going to let it go? Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, now they're competing with Blackmagic, which is a bigger, like a really large company with real development. So
we'll see. A very good app. like a very, very good app.
That app slays.
More on that later. All right. Well, that's sad. But
we always like to kick it off with a bummer.
Here, let's go on a happy one.
And other news, Panasonic will be adding, they didn't say when, but it will be free, but they are adding 12-bit RAW out via HDMI to the G9 II. That will work with Blackmagic external recorders as well as Atomos recorders. Jordan, any thoughts? You love shooting in RAW, right?
I mean, I don't do it very often. I've explained why a few times on this show. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding.
He's clumsy.
Even when this was announced. When this was first announced, I saw a bunch of comments about like, oh, it's the unbeatable image quality now. I mean, RAW is just a little more flexibility, but you're not gaining, a ton of dynamic range and stuff. But that said, it is using, I really like the fact that we're going to get both BRAW and ProRes RAW support. So, more and more people, if you're working with RAW, you're clearly very interested in heavy grading. DaVinci is the standard for that. And not all of the Panasonic cameras that have received RAW support have received BRAW support. So it's pretty cool that they're going to offer this with it. And yeah, the reasoning, I think, is when they dropped the G9 II, they said, this is the photographer's camera. That was really their emphasis. And then a whole pile of videographers picked it up and are like, hey, I'd love to have RAW on this. And they're like, well, I guess we misunderstood our own product. So yes,
it's become an incredibly popular video camera and a very capable one. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great to have that functionality. If I had clients, there are lots of clients who request RAW, even if they're never, you'd get the same results just shooting 10-bit in a log format. But it's something a lot of people feel they need. So it's nice to know if you have this camera, you don't have to rent or something in order to fulfill that requirement.
So Jordan, here's just a quick question to throw at you. So now that they have RAW support for the G9 II, if you were a starting out photographer or videographer and you're looking for either the G9 II or the GH6, let's say price wasn't really a big deal, which way would you go?
I mean, unless you really need the uninterrupted record times. I mean, I prefer the fully articulating and tilty screen on the GH6, but honestly, like the G9 II, having that great phase detect autofocus and all of the latest features that they've also rolled out with the S5 2X cameras, I think it just makes sense to go G9 II for the majority of people. And I think Panasonic recognizes that. They're not going to sell a lot of GH6s right now, so let's just make that G9 II that is very compelling as capable a package as possible. I think it's a good call.
Of note, not only are they doing this, but they've already done the second thing. They are providing Panasonic as a LUT, a lookup table for vlog, vgamut conversion of RAW output data. So you can make your RAW look and match it with vlog and vgamut, which is nice.
Yeah, this is what Resolve does by default, but it is really nice if you want to play it with this and any other NLEs. It's just nice.
Yeah, they're showing it in Final Cut here.
Yeah.
So, neat.
Nice.
Cool.
Happier news.
On that note,
better than frame lines.
Better than frame lines.
This next one I find a little bit more interesting myself personally. Hasselblad's got a brand new 90mm f2.5 that they announced a long time ago with the X2D release, and it has finally come. And I mean, this sounds fantastic, especially now the X2D also is getting face autofocus, face detect AF. So you now have a really beautiful portrait lens, shallow depth of field if you want it. And I want to play with it. I want it now.
I just find Hasselblad's focal lengths are baffling to me. Like it's a 70mm f2, like equivalent in full frame. Like
I love that.
And then there's a lot of their other XC lenses are just very odd focal lengths, they're beautiful lenses. I got to play with them, not the 90 when I reviewed the X2D.
That's because it didn't exist.
It didn't exist. Yeah,
they announced this thing over a year ago. I was told, September 7th of 2022. I was told when I reviewed the X2D, or at least I did a hands-on, I was told to expect the 90 by the following January, February. And they were like, we'll send it to you as soon as possible. And then just like crickets. And it finally showed up. I wonder what took so long. As I recall, there was something special about this lens too that was making it harder for them to produce, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, all of these new lenses, they have their super fast flash sync. So I wonder if that was part of it with a wider aperture lens, just making sure that it was actually going to deliver that. Because typically the wider your aperture on a leaf shutter lens, that is going to slow down your sync speed. So I wonder if there were issues with that. But I definitely check out, we haven't got one to test, but
Ted
I really like the looks that Ted and Manny Ortiz took some really beautiful shots with that lens. Yeah. So it's clearly, we knew it would be capable of great results. I just think it's a weird focal length.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that's cool about it, though, actually, is how small it is. So it's way lighter, way more compact. It's like 550 grams. That's crazy. And people are going to say, oh, well, yeah, it's slower than the 80mm 1.9, but you're getting a little bit more telephoto range. 2.5 is still going to give you, like, people overdo shallow depth of field a lot, in my opinion. 2.5, I think, is going to give you incredibly shallow depth of field, and you want it. I'd probably shoot it stop down most of the time anyways. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Did I mention I want it? I want it. Where is it? I want to play with it.
Well,
why don't I have one?
You never got to play with the X2D.
No.
I think you were sick when that came in. Why did I have to do that one?
Yeah,
I have to review all the medium format cameras. Thank you for doing the GFX 102.
I get ill every time a medium format camera
Were you in your basement at that time? Is that what was going on?
Probably one of the two times.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, we used to have a direct line to Hasselblad, but they basically deleted their entire East Coast PR. So I don't know what happened to any of that. I know they haven't reached out since. So clearly they have someone because they gave it to some people, but I have no idea who they are. I'll dig and see what I can find. It's basically DJI, so I should just ask our DJI contact what's going on.
Yeah.
Final story of the week. Not really news, but I wanted to get your guys' input. We published a story from the photographer, the official photographer for the Dave Matthews Band. And he got to use the A9 III, provide some input on what he thought about that for shooting concerts. And I do know that we've gotten questions from some people who are curious if it will work for specific things, including concerts. So if you did want to know what that was like, you can go check out this story. But what did you guys think of what he said?
It's a use case that immediately, as soon as they announced the camera, popped into my mind, because we're seeing now so many of those like cheap RGB spotlights that give you, weird banding, and this will eliminate that. It won't eliminate flicker, but it will eliminate banding completely in your images. Is a great use for it, and obviously the autofocus. And bands are one of those things where I really love a super fast burst rate, and I'm never just holding it down, but when you've got, a note that is a big part of a song or something, just quickly blast off like a half second of a whole pile of frames and see what you get. And the other thing to remember too is it's dark typically. So it really does help to be able to just, shoot at a slightly slower shutter speed and then pick the sharpest of all of those frames instead of, cranking your ISO up an insane amount to get 1,000th of a second. So in those cases, I think it makes a lot of sense. There was I don't know if this is what you wanted to talk about, Chris, an example in the article showing the visual difference between a rolling shutter and a global shutter, which I don't know is totally practical.
Right. You're talking about with the movement of drumsticks and things like that.
Yeah, there's a shot where you're seeing the sticks do the wobble. The cymbal is like bending in half like it's a pancake. And this is an example that we've used all the time to demonstrate rolling shutter limitations as I sit at my electric drums, which is the least dynamic looking thing you can possibly do, and swing it around. But they use the electronic shutter on the A7R5, which is a very slow reading sensor. Yeah. And you would never shoot a concert with an electronic shutter on that camera. I think a much more fair example would have been, a classic mechanical shutter or a rolling shutter with a stacked sensor camera to show the difference there, like an A1 or something like that. A1. Would have made a little bit more sense. So I feel like it makes the difference more pronounced than it actually would be my concern with that. But there's certainly big advantages for shooting concerts. I just know if it was demonstrated that well.
No taking away from the fact that global shutter will completely eliminate rolling shutter altogether, right? So it is nice to make it a total non-issue and not have to worry about that. But yes, that was about the worst Sony camera you could choose to do as a comparison. So it certainly does show up.
If you want to demonstrate it, that's the way, man. But,
I think that was probably
not totally fair. Yeah.
The benefit is still there. The point's still valid. It will completely eliminate any sort of weird drumsticks and stuff like that. It does have flicker control. A lot of cameras do. We talked about this last week, and actually we had a question from somebody about, hey, would the A9 III be good for concert photography? And so absolutely would. No taking away from the story. It absolutely would be fantastic for it. It's a perfect use case for it. Not that you have to be silent, but any sort of situations on movie sets or something like that would also be excellent if you're trying to keep as quiet as possible. So, and as Jordan said, it is designed for documentary, journalism, speed, quick shots. Honestly, we found the A9 III had very decent high ISO performance. So even if you did have to crank up your ISO, get the shutter speeds because you really do want to freeze certain kinds of action, it was quite comparable to contemporary cameras. Like, I don't think I wouldn't shy away from using it at higher ISOs. So yeah, it makes sense.
We'll see.
And I certainly wouldn't use an A7 or 5.
We're still waiting for a final production unit of the A9 III, and I think that will probably come early next year. So that'll be exciting for you guys to actually be able to look at those raw files. No one has yet.
Yeah.
So
maybe we should go see a show, Chris.
Oh man, I know. Hey, we'll go see Death Cab for Cutie with Jared.
They're coming to Portland, but that's not till May.
My May's getting pretty
the review
busy.
back to May.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the week in news. Let's get on to the main topic of today's episode, which is the PetaPixel Awards. We've been doing these for a couple years now, and the way this works, as Jordan briefly went over, is that we have, rather than just one or two people like Chris and Jordan do for their best and worst, we have the entire PetaPixel team submit nominations and pick their selections for the best camera, lens, prime lens, zoom lens, smartphone, computer, and software. We also ask people to talk like, what trend in the last year do you think was the most outstanding?
Right.
So this was, it was more like a real vote as opposed to just how someone necessarily feels about it. So
Jordan and I were even given a vote.
You were given votes.
That was nice.
So the way this works is I asked everyone to pick a first, second, and third in each category. First place got 5 points, second place got 3 points, and third place got 1 point. And then I tallied all those together, and we got the winners. We're going to go over all of these, get your guys' opinion on the selections, why you think they won, and if you think they are deserving. And we're going to start with the bottom and work our way to the top, because the camera of the year is, of course, the most exciting. So we'll do that one last. Right. But the software of the year we touched on earlier is, I wish I had like a drum roll.
Jordan's the drummer.
He is.
Jaren's a drummer too.
Yeah,
we could both do it.
It's been a while.
Let's try and synchronize it.
That's why you're always against me.
Yeah, the two drummers against the lead singer.
Oh man,
the drummers are the most antagonistic force. That's true.
They're just when you get them together.
At least we're not bassists. I'm sorry, I'm going to offend a bassist. Blackmagic's camera app for iOS was voted the software of the year. This is the first time an app has won this category for us, and I think it is quite deserving. This app is very good.
When I first used it, I couldn't figure out how to lock my exposure. So if I touched the screen, it would reset everything. It was really annoying. But then once I figured out how to lock it with just this very convenient lock icon right next to the exposure, then I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. So yeah, it's smart. And it makes me want to, like, I got a cage now for the iPhone. I'm going to try to build it up and then shoot some actual like Bow River Trout Fitter stuff with the iPhone and just give that a shot.
Give it a shot.
Having that, give it a shot. Oh, just, have that, give it a cast. Just have that one product that can handle everything, right? I always have the phone on me anyways. Why not build it in a cage, throw a mic in there? So next thing is to find a microphone that goes right into USB for that to be mounted. That's my next goal.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing kind of your experience on that. I have been using the iPhone for B-roll quite a bit. And I now have it set up so my custom button just opens the Blackmagic app for video
That's right.
recording.
You can do that.
Ooh, yeah.
You can do that. And that's been, a really handy thing just to make it feel like a legitimate camera again. Although I do have to order some NDs because I've been shooting a lot of fast shutter speeds and slow-mo with it. So
so we have to figure it out.
That's what I should do throughout this is if you're shopping for Jordan for Christmas, NDs would be on my wish list. So
for the iPhone 15 Pro.
I like 2, 3, and 4 stops that I can stack. I'm throwing that out there.
I'm fair. I don't know why you haven't asked me. I'm fairly certain like Moment makes that. So we could.
I'm sure they do.
I'm sure we have
probably get that for you.
I thought about it just now, so I'm throwing it up there.
Okay. So the other notable nomination in this category this year was DaVinci Resolve. It was close, but it did not win. And then a couple others that were on here. And I think DaVinci Resolve is a solid vote, too. That app has gotten really good in the last year and a half. A lot of people have switched to it for good reason. Some other notable ones were DxO Photolab 7 and Adobe Photoshop 2024. Adobe always makes their way onto this list because they make reliable software. Regardless of what you think, they make good stuff. It works. Yeah, you may not like how much it costs,
like their stuff,
but there you go. All right. So the next category is Computer of the Year.
Yeah.
And
Gigabyte Aero 15. And it's amazing that we actually voted this in because you guys always talk so much like
it wasn't even
Apple,
released
Apple,
this
Apple.
year, which is really fascinating.
No, there's new versions though. I mean,
that would be the 16, and even though
the 16, you're right. Yes,
I believe you are the only reason this is on this list, Chris. But
what?
The winning computer was actually the MacBook Pro with M3 Max. So I want people think that this is just like driven by Apple fanboyism by me and Jordan. I'm trying to explain to all y'all, this can't have happened with just two people voting for it. This won by a considerable amount. It got the nomination for basically everyone. And for good reason. It's a very, very good laptop. The price to performance ratio is very good. As we discussed in a previous podcast, it is difficult to recommend a laptop PC right now compared to a Mac based on a few key features like heat dissipation, noise, and the battery life and the power on battery. It's very difficult for PCs to compete there. And
I am intrigued by the chip and how it's going to be more versatile for other things.
And
like
you can game
on
it. Yes.
But I didn't vote for it.
You did not vote for it. That is, I can confirm that. The next one, we're going to try and get past all the Apple stuff because this is the last Apple thing on the list. The smartphone of the year is in a basic landslide. iPhone 15 Pro Max won smartphone of the year. Distant second with half as many votes went to the Google Pixel 8 Pro.
Ooh.
Thoughts, gentlemen?
I did vote for the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I should point that out. I did vote for an Apple product. I'm using it as my daily phone right now, and I do enjoy it. I like it. It works fine. The images are great. The interface is still sometimes annoying. I still take screenshots every time I try to turn the damn thing off.
What are you squeezing it?
I hate that. Well, because you got the off button on this side, but I'm usually putting some reverse pressure on the other side, and it usually happens to be my thumb on the lower volume button.
That's funny.
But overall, it's great, and I played with the Pixel
despite that, which is
it won
astounding.
despite that. Yeah, but and I don't want to buy iCloud storage, but I might have to. But because Apple makes you do that,
they do get you there.
The Pixel 8. I didn't get to play with it as much, but I certainly did like the images that we got out of it in Idaho. I think it's a great picture taker, and so I think there's still a lot to be said for that in the Android device. I don't find the same separation now between Apple and PC as I do between Apple and Android. Honestly, with phones, I thought there'd be this real one way or the other. And to me, I kind of feel like a smartphone's a smartphone. I just treat this as a slightly different UI, and I think it works well.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that's kind of become your daily smartphone. I can certainly say when I got the files from Chris, I was very impressed with the Pixel stills images. The video still has a long way to go, which is why the iPhone still got my vote. I mean, it's still variable frame rate depending on how much movement's in the shot, so I couldn't sync it with other cameras. It's still some interesting steps up. And the other thing too is the Pixel's big feature I'm excited about. Their night sight for video isn't available yet. So I'm looking forward to almost doing a retest when we can see how much improvement that actually offers.
I think today they brought out time lapse at night, but still not the promised night sight for video, which is kind of strange. There's also been some questions about the build quality of the Pixel that are coming up on other sites. So I don't know if that played into anyone's votes, but I actually have a question for both of you. A lot of the time, people will say that the picture quality out of the Google phone, or even out of any Android phone, was better than iPhone, but the iPhone wins so handily in video and in user experience that they typically will pick the iPhone as an overall over an Android device. I wanted to get your opinion on that. Is there still this divide where the iPhone is good at pictures, but not necessarily up to the par of Android, or is it closer?
I think the gap is really closed in quite a bit, especially if you're going to be displaying on HDR. The Google still has some work to go in that regard. What do you think, Chris?
No, yeah, I agree. I think I like that Apple stepped up the resolution 24 megapixels on their files, on their standard JPEGs. I think that will have some appreciable benefit for people that are doing social media, maybe want to crop a little bit tighter, whatnot. I didn't mind the digital lenses like I thought I would. So I think it does give you good flexibility. Image quality wise, I feel, we're getting to a point where we're kind of talking about the difference between Sony or Canon or Nikon or, Pentax or whatever, where it's just like, they're all good. They have different color, they have different rendering, they have different kind of feel.
Well, the resolution tends to be a major one that people will point to because the iPhone is pretty far behind a lot of Android devices.
But
Does it matter?
So rarely used in social media situations. In fact, it's not used in social media situations. It's rarely used if you want to maybe do prints or something. And I think there's some legitimacy now for people using smartphones as creative devices for traditional photography, not just social media. But I'd want to play more with the Pixel 8 and see some shots because, when you have sample photos where it's all from stunning Idaho and it was gorgeous and it was autumn and everything, and it's hard to compare.
I can certainly say, I'm using the iPhone 15 Pro. My wife is using the Pixel 8, and we haven't found if we're using the main camera to just get quick grab shots of our kids or something. A lot of the time in the past, I would be like, it's low light, quick, pass me your Pixel or something. We're not seeing that as much. They're very competitive on the main camera. I will say we have had a lot of issues with the camera locking up, functions becoming unavailable, where we've had to hard reboot the Pixel 8.
Really?
On the Pixel?
So if there's concerns about build quality, and I definitely have some concerns about the software, that could be a real problem for sure.
All right.
I mean, the only thing I would still point out is, to me, it really comes down to the differences in the interface for the camera. And that takes getting used to. And I mean, every camera will have its kind of annoying quirks and stuff. I do kind of like how Google, things are unlocked for you already. Having manual control just there to play with is unlocked already and stuff. Whereas I feel with Apple, they're kind of saying, well, if you want to go down that realm, you have to get the apps. And then you can do that. You could choose to do that, unlock all that stuff that we otherwise don't really want to unlock because we don't think the majority of users are going to appreciate it. Google, it's kind of already available. The whole uploading to the cloud and doing some digital trickery and stuff, that's interesting. That I don't see how I would use it very often myself personally. I don't know if Evelyn was using it much on the shots she's been taking.
No, she frames every image perfectly, so we don't have to take things out digitally from them. And
that was a big topic of conversation of the Google Pixel making things less real. Or does that matter that you can change so much? And
I'd love to know how much people are actually using that now that it's out.
The ads on TV tell me that everyone should care, and I just don't feel like people do. I just don't think it comes up.
I think it's a great step in a very interesting direction. I don't think it's something that we should avoid, but definitely from what I've seen from it, the results aren't quite convincing yet, at all. So unless you've got a very clean composition specific kind of situation, then the camera does a pretty good job. But if you've got life going on, it has issues and it gets confused. And so it's just not quite there yet.
All right, let's move on to the zoom lens of the year. And these next two categories actually were much tighter than I was expecting. Despite the fact that there were quite a few lenses released this year, a couple stood out. I'm going to first say honorable mention for this one was the Sony 20-70 f4G, which is, I think both of you said that was your favorite lens of the year, correct?
It's definitely mine.
Yeah.
Well, that was up there, but it did not win. The lens of the year in zoom is the Tamron 70-180 f2.8 Di3 VC VXDG2.
Yes, despite its incredibly ridiculous name.
I was going to say that's why it won. It was just whoever put the most letters after the focal length won the award this year.
It's a great lens. I mean, I love it. There's no disparaging it. It's super sharp. It's compact and lightweight, fast focusing, great wide open at 2.8. I mean, I don't know what else you would really ask for from a 70 to 200 other than that it would actually go to 200. And I mean, who cares? 20 millimeters? Who
Give up
cares?
20 millimeters for better performance at the rest of it? You'll do it?
Honestly, I would take this over the 7200 f4 G Master, like just because they're similar price points, but you might as well get the faster aperture. I think personally, I still think the Sony 7200 is the version 2 G Master is like the creme de la creme for that, but the 7180 comes close for a lot less money, so it totally makes sense.
I feel like there's a but with every Sony option. Like the 70 to 200 G Master 2 is a fantastic lens, but it's incredibly expensive. The Sigma 70 to 2 is a very good lens, but it's still very big. Where, like what with the 70 to 180 can you really complain about now that they've added a stabilizer and made it even sharper? Like it was one of our favorite zooms
super
before
sharp.
this. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, you're right. The original 7180 was fantastic. It was a great lens. So yeah, and they made it
Ask
better.
Nikon shooters who are now like furious that they've got the old version.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch. Still a great lens. Still a great
of note, yes, that 70 to 200 from Sony, the Mark II, is on this list, but it didn't get a lot of attention. The ones that were more popular were Sony's 16 to 35 f2.8 GM2. That made the list.
Sure.
And the Nikon 180 to 600 f5.6 to 6.3, as well as the 180 to 600 were all on here. But the winner was by a good amount, Tamron's 70 to 180. I'm actually really proud of Tamron over the years. It used to be
they've done well.
Tamron and Sigma were both like when I was in college, like you get those because you couldn't afford first party glass, and then Sigma upped its game and became like really good, and then Tamron was like, well, us too, and now I think Sigma makes incredible primes, and I think Tamron makes outstanding zooms.
Yeah, that's the real split between the two. And especially since they've started doing like totally different focal lengths from the first party manufacturers, like the 35-150. We got a review coming out very shortly for the 1750 full frame. Cool stuff like that. It looks like they're really trying to, look outside the box.
What were you going to say, Chris? Although...
Oh, well, I was going to say, you'll want to pay attention to the 17 to 50 video and see how that works out for you. It's an interesting lens. But it might change things a little bit for Tamron.
All right, cliffhanger. Let's go to the prime lens of the year. This one was basically down between two lenses. Everyone else was not close. The honorable mention here is the Nikon 135 millimeter f1.8s Plena.
You didn't pronounce it right, Jaron, and not the Plena part.
I always second guess myself.
The Nikon part.
No one does. Everyone's arguing about this.
It's the Nikon part.
Nikon.
Yeah, you didn't pronounce
You've
Nikon
been told
properly.
that a remarkable number of times lately. Is this new? Has this always happened?
No.
This has been his life.
It's only been like 15 years.
Nikon. I'm sorry, everyone who claims that it's otherwise.
Oh, man.
It's Nikon. Stop it.
I'm gonna lose it. Yeah, I'm gonna lose it.
Anyway, the Plena?
Plena? Sure. We split the difference. We just say Plena.
Anyway, it's a very, very good lens.
Plena.
It is now appearing on store shelves, and it came in second, close second. It was back and forth throughout voting, but the one that eventually won by 1 point is the Sigma 14 millimeter f1.4 DGDN Art.
I don't even remember which one I voted for because I like them both. But
well, we picked on our best and worst. We picked the Sigma because we lumped the zooms and primes together, and that was our second place lens. And I just think it's really impressive what they pulled off. We loved the G Master 14 mil 1.8. But then for Sigma to bring out a lens that's 2/3 of a stop faster, yes, it's bigger for sure. But it's the same
for
price.
Astrophotography, who cares? Yeah, absolutely. Same price. You get more light, and it's actually good in the corners at 1.4. You're not getting terrible coma, and it was sagittal, aberrations. It's all really well controlled for that price. That's fantastic. But I mean, I had great experiences with both, and obviously they're wildly different lenses for wildly different applications. Yeah. But the 135-1.8, it's a beautiful commercial lens. I'm surprised. I mean, Jordan loves the lens. Don't get me wrong, but I'm surprised you didn't go gung ho because he's got a real like 135 mil. It's not an obsession. It's like a fetish. It's like
I'm right
there with him. Dark web
it's
fetish.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, I like 135.
That's why I
Go ahead.
That's why I went into Canon mount, was for the 135L, because Nikon just had the old DC version with the slow motor and defocus control I'd never touch, and Canon had a very good autofocusing 135 f2. That's what got me into that system going back almost 20 years ago at this point, which I think is really interesting. Canon also launched a 135 this year that we're not hearing anything about, and I think it's just reviewers didn't really see that lens. We got to shoot with it for 20 minutes when the R8 was launched, Chris. You took it was a lovely 20 minutes. It looked great. But I would love to look into that. So I will say on the record, in 2024, we're going to be putting the 135s against each other. And I am going to have strong opinions. I will be on camera for a lot of it, and I will be taking pictures because I love 135. It is my jam.
We'll see if I let him touch it. But yeah, Jordan loves 135s. I mean, some guys love feet. Jordan loves 135s. That's just the way it is.
I'll go with Jordan here on this one.
You found a way to make it weird.
Yeah, you did.
You made it weird.
I used to be a 105 guy. I really liked the 105 macro from Canon for EF. Mm-hmm. What changed me over to a 135 guy was the Sony's 135. I got some of the best portraits I've ever taken with that lens. So I was partial to it at that point. And also, to touch on the thing where Canon released one and no one talked about it, Canon has an interesting strategy, which is to announce a bunch of stuff and then not provide it to the market for 8 months. It is impossible to find almost every lens they announced this year. You cannot get. And it has been somewhat frustrating, which means they fall in the category of, are you in 2023 to be voted on for best product? You will not be into the running for 2024, but no one will actually see these lenses until 2024. And that stinks.
Right.
This happens because you could actually order it right now if you're lucky and get one, but they just are so few of them. And that's problematic. I think the 24 to 105 f2.8 I will consider a 2024 lens because I don't think anyone has it. So why would we?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people like, wow, how could you say not that lens for our best and worst stuff? And it's like, we haven't played with it.
No one has played with it.
Canon.
So
send us
Jared
lenses.
Poland's got one in Africa. He's the only person alive with that lens.
I should have said no one who is at the time in the United States or Canada. At that moment, had it in hand. All right, so last one, camera of the year.
Camera of the year.
This one was a straight up blowout. Not close.
Wow.
It only did not get voted as the number one pick one time. Everyone else picked it as their favorite camera of the year.
Wow.
Nikon.
Not even a close second? Not even a distant second?
The Nikon Z8 wins it. They get 40 points. The next closest got 6.
What was that second place? I'm curious, Jen.
Canon R6 Mark II.
Sure. Nice camera.
Was that this year?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
This has been a crazy year.
Yeah, I was thinking the R8 was their only launch. Okay. Good camera. But maybe we should have considered that one as well.
The Fujifilm GFX 100
it's a good camera. We did consider
got 5 points. So it was 5. Right. Those two were battling it out for second place, and it was just not close. And this is one where I feel quite strongly about it. I think this was fantastic. For anyone saying well, what about the A9 III? No, doesn't count.
No, that's
just a 2024 camera.
And I mean that. And it does, it's 20, sure. And it also doesn't count because it's kind of the same thing with the GFX 100 version 2, which is a great camera. I loved it. It's just, we're getting to more niche cameras. And I think we give a lot of weight to best cameras of the year based on not only, capability, image quality, features, but also versatility and how many people actually benefit from it. And an A9 III is very much a specialized tool. And I would argue a GFX 100 version 2 is a specialized tool. Just like I would say, another option that we considered the M11 monochrome or the Q3. I mean, these are all specialized tools. And the Nikon Z8 is a camera that can handle pretty much any kind of photography. It's rugged. It's not overly huge. I mean,
does video well.
Autofocus is for the most part reliable. Video is excellent. So how can you fault it? And it has a state-of-the-art sensor and very fast electronic shutter. Doesn't need to worry about rolling shutter very often. These are all great things. So it opens up wildlife shooting, sports, action, journalism. You could do portraiture. I mean, you get it. So it's super versatile.
Also $4,000. So like it's way less than a lot of other cameras in that general sphere. Even
everything else we talked about is catastrophically more money.
So, yeah, if you want a stacked sensor camera in a full frame, it's the least expensive option right now, which is crazy. Yeah, God help you Canon shooters.
Yes. Yeah. And we got to shoot it a lot earlier in the year. And I mean, it did a great job. Low light, wildlife,
so I think
landscape,
I think
whatever.
this was a blowout for a reason. It's looking at everything else. There's just nothing like it that covers.
And I know everyone's and I know everybody's like, oh, but the Z9 last year and now the Z8, and okay, so whatever Nikon comes out with next year, you guys will say is the best camera. It's like, come on, man, like we got to give kudos to Nikon for how they've done such a great job, just like bringing back market share and making great products. And, Nikon, Nikkor lenses have been really good as well this year. So great job, Nikon.
I mean, if Nikon, like they did with the Z8, if they bring out a version that's like, 65% of the price, but all the same features as a Z8 again next year, then they win Camera of the Year again next year as well. So we'll see.
Oh, man. I have fantasies of all the North American Nikon reps just like forming a posse and going to all these people's houses and just re-educating them on how we pronounce Nikon in North America.
I don't want to go.
It's like a dream.
Far.
It's just a dream. It means nothing.
The re-education thing has some baggage that I'm not interested in digging up.
Okay.
All right. So
I'm not going to co-sign.
No. So while those are the awards, those are to specific cameras and specific companies. I do ask the team to also give me what they think was a trend of the year for cameras, lenses, the whole industry. And there were two that came up repeatedly. The second one, and the reason it did not win is because it hasn't fully developed yet. We need to see where it goes.
Right.
But the push for content authenticity was a major conversation this year. We'll see about it again next year. But the one that I think everyone agreed on when they brought it up was mirrorless zoom lenses. And the fact that the mirrorless mounts that we were promised were going to be better are actually finally showing that. The zoom lenses we're getting in mirrorless this year are bananas. All of them have been very interesting. And we want to point out that I think we're finally reaching the point where they're delivering on the promise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out we didn't have a worst lens category in our best and worst this year because mirrorless lens designs have gotten so outstanding. There are some that we might be like, it's not the best value, but to actually call it worst is very difficult this year.
Yeah.
Just seeing focal lengths that we could never have seen before. Like, I don't know if it's a flange back issue, but we never saw ultra wide to normal lenses, which is my new favorite focal length. And we've seen one in pretty much every mount at this point. I think Canon's the last holdout on that. So,
and we're seeing substantial benefits to like lenses getting smaller and lighter, which was always the thing with mirrorless, but we're really seeing that now. Formulas like where you're like, wow, how did they even get it this compact and lightweight?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like the 300 2.8, 70 to 200s all over the place. Like they're really getting small. I mean, Canon's done a compact one, Sony, Tamron, Nikon, like they're all making really nice small lenses, which was really the mirrorless appeal. Like that was one of the main promises that the mirrorless market made to photographers. And so we're really seeing that come to fruition for sure.
Or if they are big lenses, they're doing something we haven't seen before, like the 24-105 2.8.
Right.
All right. That's it. That's the PetaPixel Awards. Congratulations to all the companies that impressed us this year. There was a lot. This was a very busy year for cameras, and we love to see it. Feels like the industry is really bouncing back after some really down years. So you guys have been plenty busy since coming over to PetaPixel, and I love to see it. I like seeing all the new stuff, and congratulations to everyone again.
Yeah.
With that,
good job, Nippon Kogaku.
With that, what have you been up to, Jordan?
This week, I have actually been able to watch a few movies. I'm going to do like a speed round. So The Killer just came out on Netflix. Anyone can watch it right now. I like David Fincher quite a bit, and I really enjoyed that. If you want to just see what happens when you give a reasonable budget to a very talented filmmaker, it's just nice to see like a genre romp. There's nothing about it that's super compelling. It's just you follow a series of events in a hired assassin's life when things go wrong. But it's just incredibly well made, and it's fun to watch that. The sound design on it is insane. So do not watch it, on a TV with kids running around during the day. Wait till you can throw it on a good home theater and really enjoy that. At Chris's recommendation, after 3 years, I believe, I finally watched Shall We Dance, the Japanese film.
It's longer than that.
Yeah. He got actually angry with me recently.
No way.
So my wife and I did watch that while he had my kids at a birthday party, his daughter's birthday party. They went to see a movie. Ev and I ran home and watched a movie. So thank you, Chris, twice over for that.
It's a lovely movie.
It's just like a good feel. Movie. If you're looking for like feel good with a little bit of craft behind it, again, that is definitely something that
but it gets away from that classic Japanese cinema stereotype of like the acting being very melodramatic or like overly schmaltzy. It's quite grounded, still talks about sort of the Japanese subculture and sort of the family, the construction of the family. And I think it's
the shame dynamics are really interesting.
The shame dynamic. Yeah. Oh, we love our shame. Yeah.
Big on that.
Big on the shame.
Last one is just a quick recommendation. I was talking to my wife and I referenced the movie Petite Maman, which is like the second film from the filmmaker who made Portrait of a Lady on Fire, one of my favorite movies from the last 10 years. Made this short little follow-up. It's an hour and 5 minutes is like her follow-up to this giant masterpiece. But the idea of it is a 8-year-old girl, after her grandmother passes away, they go back to empty out the house, and her mom, aged 8, is there. So it's got kind of like a supernatural element to it. Her mom's quite distant, so they connect as kids. It is gorgeously shot, super well directed, and the end of it I find actually very moving. So not many people heard about it.
Would you recommend that to me?
I would recommend that to you, especially, it's last night we were like, we should watch a movie, but it's very late. And an hour, 5 minutes for like that super
like a TV show.
Well crafted. Yeah, exactly. It's an episode. It's half a Bachelor and it's much more moving.
I'm going to go next because I want Chris to end us on this one. But I got a question last week about how my Pathfinder campaign is going. For those who don't know what that means, that is a tabletop RPG like Dungeons and Dragons, but Pathfinder is for people who think Dungeons and Dragons is too mainstream. That's not me. I just was asked to join this. I'd never played a tabletop game before, so this was my first experience. Like it a lot. It's forcing me to go outside and interact with other human beings, which is something I don't typically do that much because I like being at home and playing my video games and whatnot. And it's, I play Baldur's Gate, so I'm really enjoying the whole dice thing. For those that are curious where we're at, I'm currently a level 3 ranger, and I'm got a weird dynamic where everyone else that I'm playing with is very squishy in terms of like no hit points. I got a cleric, I got a gnome mage, and I have a rogue, and then me. So we don't have like a dude who can stand up front and take hits. So I've had to craft my character to be tanky while also be ranged. So I have...
You're tankless.
We have no tank,
party.
But I can dish out damage quite well, and I'm enjoying it a lot. My character has almost only died once, and a couple other guys have only almost died once. We have not lost anyone, and things are progressing, and I'm having a good time. And
more importantly, young humans are like speaking to each other and breathing the same air.
What is the median age of the group of people you're playing with, Jared?
35.
Is it young people?
35.
Okay, yeah. That was
35's young. Yeah. 35's young.
Yeah. We're relatively young. Anyway, there you go. That's my update. And to the one person that asked, there you go. Chris?
Nice.
What's on your desk?
So I did have my daughter Maddie, her 8th birthday party with 13 children that my wife and I had to wrangle. That was great.
What's your
Jordan's
review
kids
on Trolls 3, Chris?
Band apart? No, I mean, I can't stand just, kids movies. Anyways, Soul was great. Oh, I miss Soul. But it was terrible. But they had a great time. Maddie had a wonderful time. Your kids, as always, Jordan, were lovely, very well behaved. I only had to spank them 3 times, I think, is what I texted your wife. Everybody was, but it's, birthday parties, just exhausting. If you, that's the best birth control, is just take like prospective parents to a birthday party for kids and be like, this is your future. And they'll be like, maybe we shouldn't.
There's going to be 18 of these per child.
Oh man, and then you break out the Visa card at the end of the day. Yikes. So anyways, that's it. But I'm alive still, and I'm trying out. Maybe it sounds different. Have you noticed how my microphone is a shiny cylinder? It's like
if you're listening, you might not have.
Yeah.
No, but it's a shiny cylinder. It looks like one of the transport space folding.
No, it's a cylinder.
Dune.
You're a cylinder when you talk about Sony. Chris.
I'm a cylinder for Icon studio quality USB streaming mic from Earthworks Audio. I have to read off the box. I'm such a shill. But tell me how it sounds, because normally we're using the Sennheiser Profile 2s. Let me know how this sounds. It's a bit more directional. One thing I will say, review right off the bat, it's micro USB A into here. I think that's a big no-no because that's going to break. But
yeah.
Static setup. Hopefully it'll last, but that's a notoriously terrible. My USB-C port's already bending in half. This one's going to break in 2 days. But otherwise, hopefully it sounds good. You guys let me know.
Yeah, I really like the sound of it.
It's better than the Sennheiser.
Here.
Yeah, it sounds good.
And hopefully I'm not peaking. I know that's a problem.
I'm going to try it next week, and we'll see how it works with my deep, bassy, sensuous voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Okay, let's get into the comments and tech support. We'll start with tech support. Let's lead off with a speak pipe from Blake.
Hey, guys. I know you guys are really behind on the questions, so I hope we're all doing good in the year 2068. Jordan, I really like how the mullet came in. It's looking awesome. Anyways, I was wondering, all the different brands have different names for it and slight variations of phase detect. Lumix has phase detect, and then Canon has dual pixel, and so on. I was wondering, is there any technical difference between the different versions, or is it all just the same thing? Is it mostly just the software and how it interacts with the lens that determines the quality of it? And is there any practical advantage between one system and the other?
I mean, I want to start by just saying in 2068, I don't care if I have a mullet. If I'm still alive, that's a huge W for me. So, yeah, I'll take that. Go ahead with the actual answer to the actual question.
Well, I mean, there's not a huge technical difference. No. And this actually would probably go for for contrast detect as well, right? I mean, effectively, the technology is the same. I mean, the sensors being made by a lot of the same manufacturers, and the autofocusing pixels are incorporated onto the sensor. So it really is more so software based, how the companies choose to manipulate that data, where they focus. I mean, a good example is Panasonic when they were doing their DFD. Yeah, depth from defocus, DFD. I was getting confused with DND, all your dice talk. So that was an interesting take on how they set up the algorithm to handle how far out of focus it is, how much we have to shift that focus. Yeah, so the technology is the same. How the companies choose to use it, how good their deep learning, their machine learning algorithms are at now picking up faces or animals or whatever the subjects. I think that plays a much bigger part now in the performance of the autofocus than the actual technology itself.
I mean, the big difference, dual pixel and phase detect, because you mentioned, they're all using the same chips. Well, Canon isn't. They still make their own sensors.
So does Samsung.
And they're the only ones.
Samsung has dual pixel too.
Yes. So what dual pixel, the big difference is you have dedicated phase detect pixels on a phase detect sensor scattered across it, which theoretically, we heard this from Panasonic for years, will impair image quality because it has to interpolate the information where those phase detect pixels should be, where dual pixel AF actually has like 2 phase detections on every single little pixel. So you shouldn't have any light or information loss with that. But I think really the proof is in the pudding, which is we haven't really seen image quality penalties with phase detect cameras.
Not to a significant degree.
And dual pixels, we're not seeing substantially better image quality on dual pixel cameras. But the big thing is the autofocus performance between dual pixel AF and phase detect seems very similar. I would even give a slight edge to what Sony and sometimes Nikon are doing right now. So I think it's just two technologies getting us to the same point.
I would argue that Canon, the main benefit that we've seen in their autofocus lately has been their algorithms, right? Not their dual pixel technology, but their algorithms have started to get to the point where they're quite comparable. Yeah.
I should mention it's the 10th anniversary of dual pixel autofocus. I took a look this morning and our 70D review Came out 10 years ago.
Wow.
That was the first one with it. And then it made a ton of sense because you had a flippy floppy phase detect mirror, but in live view, your autofocus was hot garbage. And that changed with the implementation of that. Yeah. Nowadays, I don't think it's as big an advantage.
All right. Jay Johnston emailed, what are the best options for small portable hard drives or SSDs for backing up images while traveling? I don't need NAS. No, you don't need NAS, not for traveling. Just a small drive that I can download my dailies to and connect to my laptop or desk computer for post-processing, adding to my Lightroom catalog. I have the answer for you, and it is a guide that I wrote with a couple others on the team that actually tested all of the major ones that you can buy. The answer depends on what you're using. If you care about Thunderbolt and have Thunderbolt, your options are more expansive. You get the benefits of anything that is Thunderbolt as well as anything that's USB-C. If you don't have Thunderbolt, then you would go with only USB-C. What we found is the one that's the best for Thunderbolt is the LaCie SSD. It's the small rugged one. And then, hold on, I cannot remember what the one that we picked for non-Thunderbolt because I don't use a non-Thunderbolt computer. So it took me a bit. One second.
I mean, I'll use any slutty hard drive that comes across my desk.
I have to say it like that.
But Jordan, you specifically, Jordan, you love your Samsungs, don't you?
I've had really good success, and in Jaron's article as well, you can see those tested really well for reliability.
Yeah, those are the W7s,
not necessarily speed, the T7s. Yeah,
T7s.
They have another one. Samsung released the T8 recently, and it performed very similarly, but the casing is better. I don't like the case on the Samsung T7s personally. I don't like the way it feels. But
yeah, it's a 50-50 shot with the USB-C port too. Sometimes they're quite loose on the 7s.
Yeah.
It seems like the recent ones have been better.
But the one that we liked overall, in addition, Samsung's a great pick. Nothing against Samsung. We just found that overall the Crucial X10 Pro performed better. And if you have USB 3.2 2x2, which is not super common, but does exist, this will be better on that. But so will Samsung's T8. So it's like between those two, whichever one's on sale, whichever one like the size you like, those are both great. The Crucial is just real small and generates less heat than others through some chicanery that Crucial did that I don't think anyone else has done. Good chicanery. I don't think is that a thing?
The more often I plug one in and it actually comes up with the drive and it doesn't say something's wrong with this this folder, the happier I am. That's all I ask for in an SSD. That's all I want.
Well,
and no, that's all.
If you pick any of the drives we put on this list, that will likely be what happens. I will link to this guide.
Don't buy a SanDisk.
Don't buy a SanDisk. This guide was actually made in response to people being like, our SanDisks are breaking. So there is no SanDisk on this list. I don't recommend buying any SanDisk right now, especially since SanDisk refuses to acknowledge that there's anything wrong with their drives and keeps selling them for major discounts when they shouldn't. But that link is in the description below. Next one is from Griffin. This is also a speak pipe. Let's listen in.
Hey, PetaPuppies. This is Griffin from Wisconsin. I found that the majority of my photography nowadays is spent doing sports photography for Ultimate Frisbee tournaments. I currently flip-flop between my Pentax K3 and Sony A77 Mark II. I used the DA 55-300 on the Pentax because I needed something waterproof, and on the Sony I have a 70-210 beer can lens. I'm finding that the autofocus and, to a lesser extent, the range is letting me down. Is there room to change lenses on these cameras for better performance in those, or are they just drawbacks of these older bodies? I'm sort of looking into the Minolta 500mm reflex autofocus, but more realistically the 1.4 teleconverter for the beer can. And for the Pentax, either upgrading to the PLM version of the 55-300 or splurging on the 300 f4, or even going to the Bigma 150-500 Sigma lens. Thank you.
I love these types of questions because I hear about lens and camera combinations in 2023 that I don't think people understand are still common or used. This is one of them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, good on Griffin for going the SLR route still, rocking the DSLRs.
Or SLT, even more rare.
Wow, yeah, right? I mean, holy cow. I think one of the issues you're going to have, autofocus for sure is going to be tough. You're not getting tons of range. The problem is if you start throwing teleconverters on those lenses, which are already fairly slow lenses, you're going to trade one for the other. Your range will get better, but your autofocus is going to be even more of a letdown. I don't think that's the answer. So I don't know, Jordan. This is tough because I don't want to be the guy who says go to mirrorless. I certainly wouldn't get the reflex autofocus. I think you'd find that very limiting, where you might find a zoom very useful for what you're doing.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to like get people jumping in the air and faces and stuff, like, I don't know. Does it go mirrorless? I don't know. I feel like a zoom is still something you're going to want, Griffin.
Yeah. I mean, the one that jumped out to me, much like the Frisbee players, like they said, move on over to a Pentax lens with the faster autofocus motor. But Chris and I actually tested this when that lens came out alongside the KP and did not notice a huge increase in the actual speed. It's much quieter, but not substantially faster. I hate to say it, but if you're really butting up against this, maybe like a crop sensor mirrorless camera with a telephoto might be use your other stuff that you enjoy shooting for everything where you don't need the fast autofocus, but like a little Sony 6700 with a tele, like that 70-3 Sony is a great lens and very compact.
And look, you can make it work. You're obviously doing it already, right? And there's lots of kinds of photography where we wouldn't recommend it. But I do think a lot of sort of DSLR users that then get a mirrorless camera with the latest autofocusing, the better algorithms, a lot of them have this sort of aha moment of like, where have you been all my life? This is so much simpler. It's easier. I can focus more on just compositions. My hit rate's getting way higher. Less to carry. I don't know. I mean, you're fit. You're doing ultimate Frisbee, so.
I mean, he's photographing.
What I would recommend, a lot of people will say, grab a adapter and a mirrorless camera to use your existing A-mount lenses. That doesn't work great. We really struggled with that when we were testing.
I'm shaking my head. Yeah.
Sorry, Griffin, that we don't have, better.
A cheap answer.
Yeah, a cheap answer.
I mean, if you're going to get a Bigma.
Well, the one is the 150 to 500. Is that the green one, or is that a different lens entirely?
Not the green one.
Because that's what I call the big lens. And I feel like
that's the biggest ma.
Yeah, if you were going to.
But the 150 to 500s are like popular. They're still very big. They're like this long. Very popular all black sports and wildlife lenses. They were interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not the 120 to 3 2.8. That's the biggest Bigma.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you can afford that, you may as well just go and get all of what you guys just suggested. Go get in the system. All right, moving on. The Urban Lumberjack on Spotify asks, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what DJI's LiDAR focus system is like combined with supported Panasonic cameras. This was an update that came out, I think, earlier this year. I would love to know where you feel it sits compared to other brands' autofocus systems.
I have touched that 0 times.
Yeah, we haven't been able to use it because I don't have a LiDAR system for the RS3 that we sometimes use on our shoots. However, I can say it's using the same essential algorithms that we've seen with the Ronin 4D, or if you are using the LiDAR with a mechanically driven follow focus, which means it's quite good at mid-range distances, does a great job. Where LiDAR really does struggle a little bit, I've found, is close-up. I can't trust it for like product shots, things like that, was where it was letting us down a little bit. And this should be identical because it's using the same unit. It's just telling the lens where to drive. So I would expect very similar results with that. We're hoping to do kind of an update, see where DJI is at with the latest version of that. Hopefully this year, maybe early next year. So stay tuned. I'll have better impressions, and whatever we find, you can basically assume it applies the same if you use it with a Panasonic.
All right, moving right along. Let's listen to a speak pipe from Andreas.
Dear beloved PetaPixel team, a few short weeks ago I had to fill in for a photographer to shoot a children's birthday party on quite short notice. It was a fun and fast-paced shoot, but by the end of it, the grandfather of the child came to me and said he has an old camera lying around and he didn't use it for the last 10 years and he wants me to have it as a present because he liked the way I presented myself during the shoot. Well, was I in for a surprise? It was a 645 AF Phase 1 with an 80 megapixel Leaf Aptus 2 f/12 digital back and 3 Schneider Kreuznach 2.8 lenses. After a bit of polite arguing that I couldn't possibly take it, it went home with me. Now, I am actually 80% video and a 20% photo guy, so hybrid shooting. Now, what would you do? Sell it and invest it in modern equipment that I can use on my day-to-day jobs? Or did it come to me, the camera, because it wants to be used by me? Now, what are your thoughts on it? Cheers and thanks from Vienna. Yours, Andreas.
So first off, Andreas, yes, this is amazing.
Story is bananas.
Also, you have a great voice, and whatever mic you recorded this on, I mean, start a podcast.
Yes, and
you're set.
And I could listen to you pronounce Schneider Kreuznach all day long. I'm going to call Jaron Schneider Kreuznach from now on.
It's probably somewhere in my history we're related to that group.
That's your new nickname. But this is crazy. I mean, we're talking about a very expensive, but also, and very well built, but also very old in digital terms camera. And I don't think it shoots your shooting, like it doesn't suit your shooting style. I'm a sucker for if somebody gives me something old that they've really treasured, I want to then make that a tool that I use. But realistically, for what you're doing for work, I don't know that it's really going to be something you're going to use. So I would say either keep it to this is a great memory and you like take it out and you kind of just enjoy the experience of shooting this outside of your job, or pass it on to somebody who will really use it all the time and take that sweet cold hard cash and get some stuff for yourself.
Yeah, that was going to be exactly where I was at as well. Is just if it's completely different from how you're used to shooting and it's fun, go take it out. You have it now. See if you enjoy it. If you're not absolutely in love with it, then give it to someone else.
Or sell it.
Sell it for so much money. So
those
much
lenses,
money.
I think, are really valuable.
Exactly.
Kreuznach.
Yeah. So
love it.
Cool story.
And yeah,
amazing.
Be a voice actor. Just be a voice actor. Or read me, record. Andreas, can you send me lullaby stories? Just read books to me. And I'll, oh man, I could fall asleep.
I will say one more thing,
keep
Andreas. I tried to reach back out to you. I have no way to communicate with you. I would actually like to feature you this story on PetaPixel as just like a cool story. So if you would email me, please, so that we can coordinate, because I think if you took some pictures of these and we talked a little bit about your work, that would be a really cool story. So you can do that at eic@petapixel.com. Only Andreas email me, please.
That's the sound people make when they see Jaron. They go, eek!
And I know we're running out of time, but one more thing. It's just normally when a photographer goes to do a job like a wedding or a party or whatever, and then the old grandfather or uncle comes out of the woodwork, usually it's a horrible thing. Oh, well, in my day, I would use this. And what aperture are you using? Oh, that's the wrong one, blah, blah, blah. Rarely does this person say, hey, you know what? I got an amazing camera for you.
Thousands and thousands of dollars of sweet-ass gear.
Use it. So, wow, what a great story. Anyways.
It was a very good story. I'm glad that you shared that with us. We're going to move on to, hold on one more second. I just lost my page. All right. Next one is also a speak pipe. This one is from Matthew, and I like this one. Let's listen in.
This is Matthew from Minnesota. I've been watching for years, and I really enjoy the best buddies vibe of the show. I've been taking a lot of portraits lately, and the recharge time and the lack of power of my speed light is really killing me. Can you make some recommendations for a more powerful and possibly plug-in light? That might be a nice budget option to get started on more flash and focused portraits.
You guys have been using lights lately, so that's why I'm excited for you to talk about this, because you've been using them to great effect.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're using the Westcotts, the FJ400s, the FJ200s. They're very portable. They're battery powered. I like the boxes. I mean, they're pricey lights. I wouldn't say that they're like a budget flash, but very reliable. The universal adapter has had zero problems. So I've been finding I'm shooting a lot more flash now that I've got bigger light sources that are still very portable. So I'm enjoying the experience.
When we were in Monterey,
and there are
you ran into a guy that was using basically the same setup as you at a restaurant, and you had to go. You ran over there and showed him.
Oh yeah. We had a Westcott moment. Yeah, it was really sweet. But also Minnesota, great place. I've heard Canada has been described as we've got the laws and sensibilities of England, and then we've got the culture of Minnesota. And that's in a good way. That's a compliment.
Yeah, I would definitely say look more towards those smaller output. If you're dealing with a speed light right now, remember you can get a 200 like that FJ200 Chris had there. dial that thing way back, and your recycle times are like nothing, if that's what's really been frustrating you right now. And you'll still get the benefits. It used to be like you're going full manual with off camera, and you can still do that. I prefer to, but you can also get like TTL functionality and stuff with them as well. Just be aware, it's different modifiers. So you do tend to pay actually a little bit more for the fixture with less output, which is interesting, as opposed to like a big old Bowens mount. But they're great.
No, the rapid boxes are really quick, easy. Yeah, it's super nice. Super nice.
Next question is from Steve. This is also a speak pipe. Let's listen in.
Just want to say thanks for the podcast, and it's always great to find more Gunpla and Gundam fans. Unicorn is the best Gundam. But my question is that as an amateur photographer who mostly takes photos of Gunpla figures, I find that a lot of the times in my photos, there appears to be some sort of chromatic aberration or fringing along the edges of the subject. And I can't seem to figure out what's causing this. I'm using a DIY light box with a ring light, and I'm shooting on a Fujifilm X-T3 with the included 18-55 f2.8 kit lens. I assume it's something to do with how I'm lighting the figures, or perhaps something to do with the autofocus, but I'm not entirely sure. And I was just wondering, what can I do to avoid this kind of color fringing?
Before you answer that, Chris, hold on.
Steve.
He said that Unicorn is the best Gundam. I've also heard that. However, it's in the UC timeline, which requires I watch like 6 other shows before I can get to Unicorn to know what's going on. So I believe you that you probably have a very good opinion, but I'm so unable to argue with you because I just don't know. It takes too much effort to get there.
Plus,
check back in 8 months.
From my limited experience with Gundam, to say the best, what does that mean? I mean, Gundam is more complicated than F1 racing. You could say who's the best F1 racer / F1 car of this year, and it would be a less complicated answer
it's fun
than
to
what
argue
these
about it
people will
because
give
nobody
you.
can ever be really right. Anyway, Chris, why is he getting chromatic aberration on his Gunpla figures?
Steve, you're dealing with what sounds like, and I'm assuming this is on the areas that are in focus largely, right? Because you're shooting this Gunpla to have pretty much everything in focus. It sounds like you're getting good old-fashioned classic chromatic aberration, and this is where we get a little bit of light bleeding. The light's getting split by the lens, and it's not coming back all together on the exact same plane. There's some wavelengths that are kind of splitting off, and then you get these color fringes, and you'll often see it on areas of contrast, and a Gunpla would be perfect because you usually have a lot of white plastic, a lot of hard edges against dark background, so that's where you're going to see it. White really shows it up well. The lucky thing is it's very easy to fix in post. So if you're using Lightroom or Capture One, you can go into your lens correction tools and you can adjust your chromatic aberration sliders. The Fuji 1855 is a great lens, 2.8 is a great lens, but it does have some chromatic aberration. It's very easy to get rid of. If you have areas that are out of focus in the shot and the whole scene is kind of going greenish or magentish, like not just the edges, like the whole thing, that's LOCA, longitudinal chromatic aberration, and that's much harder to get rid of, but I don't think that's your problem here.
If it does turn out it is LOCA, which I remember that lens has a little bit at the longer end, stop down. That'll help, if you bring it down even to, it's an f4 maximum aperture, shoot it at 5.6 to f8, and it's really going to help with that issue, whether it's standard chromatic aberration or longitudinal chromatic aberration.
The answer to your question specifically is it's your lens. The lens is what's causing
that. You can't do anything with
the rest of your stuff is probably great. Also, send me Gunpla pictures. I need to see. Send them. The email address that I gave to Andreas, you can also use that, but only if it includes Gunpla pictures. All right, last one. Tim has asked on SpeakPipe. Let's listen in.
Hey, Jordan, Jaron, and Chris. This is Tim from New Hampshire. I was wondering if you'd be able to help me narrow down to a lens selection for some portrait photography. I'm torn between the Fujifilm 50-140 2.8 and the 56 1.2 WR. I keep flip-flopping back and forth. I like the versatility the 50-140 will offer, but the 56 does give you that 85mm full frame equivalent. Let me know what you think.
Yeah. You're going to get that 85mm equivalent regardless. And I totally agree. I mean, it's a great lens. The 50-140, I think if you're doing more like, like model kind of portraits or like family stuff or grad or whatever, that kind of thing. I like having a zoom because you have the flexibility of doing group shots or doing standing portraits a little bit easier, and then going to tight shots. Even going up into that higher telephoto range can be really nice for like tight compression shots, or even standing shots at a long distance in a park. That 140 mil will give you like a really dynamic look. And honestly, f2.8, even on APS-C, you're still going to get, I usually shoot portraits stop down anyways. So 56 mil 1.2, it really does give you that magic if you want to do like close up, eyes in focus, everything else going soft. But that's a fairly limited use case, in my opinion. I don't shoot like that very often.
The big one I want to touch on, when they announced an updated 56, I was hoping for a new focus motor. That 56 is not a very fast focuser. So if you like to shoot candids, that right around that range is my favorite candid focal length. It's not going to be awesome for that. One other thing, if you can deal with something a little longer to get back on my 135 podium.
Oh, man.
The Fuji 90mm LM-WR, one of my favorite lenses ever made. That's an f2, a little bit slower, but a great middle ground between those two lenses. And a bunch of my favorite photos I've ever taken were with that lens. I adore it.
But somewhat limited in the scope of how you can use it or where you can use it, depending on the space you have.
All right, we're going to get to Never Read the Comments, a section where we always read the comments, and we're going to burn through these because I'm hoping to spend about maybe 5 minutes max on this before we end the show. These first two are from your best and worst video. I just wanted you to know that basically the sentiment overall is, please, for the love of God, don't ever stop this series. Sean Paul Photo wrote that. It's one of the most upvoted comments on the episode. There weren't a lot of questions there, mostly just people saying how much they like you. But I also wanted to... Orientated
is a word.
There's a lot of discussion about that.
The British... Yes, the British like to use orientated, and we're Canadian, and we take a lot of our linguistics from them. So it's totally appropriate.
Previous guest on the show, Richard Butler, went to the comments, and I was ready to fight Chris to the death, but if Richard says it's true, it must be true. So
and he's from Gloucester,
giving Chris a hard time for orientated. It still sounds, when I say it, I sound like something's wrong with my mouth. Yeah.
You guys, there's one more comment on this that I wanted to bring up. You guys remember our boy, Antonio Di Benedetto, right?
Yes,
well,
of course.
He used to be at Leica. He's now at The Verge. He gave you guys a shout out over on The Verge. Yes. He said that PetaPixel's Chris Nichols and Jordan Drake are once again recapping the year's best and worst cameras over made-up drinking games. This is my favorite annual camera nerd tradition, and it's now running for 10 years and 3 YouTube channels.
That's true. We miss you and we appreciate you, Antonio. Thank you very much.
He says also,
and congratulations.
No spoilers, but I'm here to say that the Nikon ZF was shunned. And after 10 years, Chris's excellent hair is aging better than his alcohol tolerance.
My alcohol tolerance is great, but my hair is aging. Well, thank you. Oh, dude, I had okay, first off, it's a show. Okay, there's a little bit of showmanship. It's a show. I was drunk, but it's a show. But also, I had an hour-long nap.
I know.
Come on. I had an hour-long nap, and I was right as rain. I don't get hangovers. I'm blessed that way. It's great. Anyway.
All right. The next two are from the Phase 1 review, which is shockingly one of our most popular episodes of the year. Danny Hutt says, you deserve the Diplomat of the Year award, Chris, for your success and teasing out the positive aspects of this ridiculous camera. And you refrain from pointing out that the market for this paperweight is ultra-rich people who want to give the impression that they are serious about photography by buying the most expensive camera out there. Yeah. Well done. I don't think that that's really who it's for, but it's probably who...
that's why I didn't say it. I don't think it's an ultra-rich toy. Either. No, I think a Leica, okay, let's look. Like, this is... I don't know who this is for.
That was the most confusing thing. It's like, we actually don't know who would buy this.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because there's not going to be a ton of them, but it's for a very different subsect of people. Like, if I was ultra rich, I wouldn't buy this. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I would get a Leica, or I would get something else like a Hasselblad, like luxurious and sexy. This is really like it's a unicorn Gundam.
That doesn't make any sense.
But I thought that was the best.
That.
Oh wait, it's a unicorn. Sorry, it's a unicorn.
All right, two more comments from these are on the last podcast. POV walks with roving Cyclops. That is a name. They told me, and I feel bad, says, my SpeakPipe was clearly lost in the mail. Still waiting for a good explanation as to why reviewers talk megapixels for sensors, but dots for screens and EVF. Consumers might get a little more riled up if they realize manufacturers are shortchanging them by making them look at less than a megapixel representation of what their 24 megapixel sensor is trying to show them. I don't know what happened to your SpeakPipe. I don't remember ever getting one like this, and every single one we get, we talk to. So I apologize. But yeah, why? Why are we doing dots and not megapixels?
I guess they're not technically pixels.
I mean, the big reason for it, you can read them that way. I mean, it's just a panel. Manufacturers are doing it. It's how people are used to comparing the quality of different displays on cameras. It is silly and it's deceptive. Jaron pointed out when we started at PetaPixel, is like, I'm not sure that the resolution math totally lines up because you've got 3 dots to a pixel. So when you put your resolution together, it's like, oh, it's a third of what they've advertised. We do say it because if you're looking to compare it to your existing model, you probably understand it in terms of how many million dots it is. But what I also do whenever that comes up is on screen, and a lot of people, I think when we're doing a review, if we're not saying like specifically look at this, they're looking at another tab or they've got their phone out or something like that. On screen, I will always put the actual resolution of that display.
Yeah, 1920 by 1080, for example, whatever.
Yeah, to give you a better version of it. I mean, why people might be mad to find out that their display is only giving them, less than a megapixel is because there aren't really better displays. Even like some of the best EVFs out there are just slightly more than 1080p video, which is 2 megapixels. So, as the technology improves, we'll certainly keep on griping that it's not as good as the photo your camera's taking. But
also, as Jordan said, like, it's the industry standard, and I mean, our critics are the most pedantic people on the planet, and thus we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. Nikon.
All right, last thing. This one I wanted to end on. It is a speak pipe from Alex Hayes. Let's listen in.
Hi guys, this is Alex from the UK. Just want to say thanks very much for your amazing work on various YouTube channels over the years and also through the podcast. You might not be aware, but for some of us, it's not that easy to actually access the photography community in our local area. And your guys' content and how you present and the things you talk about is really, really valuable, especially during COVID, for example. So thank you for everything you've done. I just wanted to ask about your own personal photo projects or video projects for Jordan. What are the things that you are most passionate about shooting? Do you have any projects that you have on the go at the moment? And what are the things that really get you fired up to actually use your cameras not for a work-related reason? Thanks again for all the work. Bye.
Yeah, I definitely, I've said repeatedly, one of my favorite places to be on Earth is on set. I really love that energy and that vibe. It's something I really enjoy that, I would love to do more often. But it is a absolute colossal time commitment to do it properly. Even if it's a week of shooting, it's months and months of prep to do that properly. So I haven't been able to do it as much as I'd like, but I will say I absolutely loved the process of doing the Blair documentary. It was a lot of work, but that felt, again, more like just classic filmmaking, what I grew up and wanted to do. And we've got some potential projects that are very similar to that. And I'm really looking forward to doing more of those. If you are, in the Calgary area and you just need like a grip for a couple days, call me up. I'll happily do it. I love that experience.
He doesn't have time.
I will be editing like when you're all at Crafty. I'll be sitting there on my laptop trying to pump out another PetaPixel.
And I'll be there in the background recording talking points. It's tough.
Okay. Yeah. You don't get to answer that question, Chris, because Alex didn't ask you. So
nobody cares. That's fine.
I
get it. Nobody cares about what I want to do. That's fine.
You've made it very clear. You want to fish and shoot things.
Yeah, that's true.
And that'll do it for the week. True. Next week is the last episode of the podcast season. I'm looking forward to that episode quite a bit. It's going to be fun. Hope you tune in for that. Thank you for listening this week. Thanks again to our sponsor, OM System, for sponsoring the PetaPixel podcast. We appreciate it. And that's it. Sorry, this is, again, a little bit long, but some of you seem to think you don't mind. So that's...
Don't apologize. Don't apologize, Jaron. They love it.
Okay.
They love every second of it.
All right.
Thanks,
everyone.
Catch you
next week.